side grab for the leg loop. 90% of the people go like this to grab for the leg loop. I just lost my anchor. Okay? Right. So you hug the swing. Hug, right? So we all know what hugs are, right? We hug the swing and then grab. So important to cue people because you'll see them go like this. Yeah. They're not going to go far, but they will just slide right out. So I'm like, oh, come on in. So wrapping inside out is a no-no because we don't have any anchor. We always want to wrap. So I've extensively reviewed the postures. Every single posture is outside in. I went through just to make sure. I'm like, am I missing something? I'm like, oh no, because we have to wrap. So for me, maybe I was a wrestler in my past life or something, but I always wrap. You know, like when I go to hook something, I wrap my legs around, or I wrap my, it's just natural for me to hook. And that's why I call it like a hook, right? But not everybody does that naturally for some reason. So I emphasize that, particularly when we start to get into inversions. It will happen that somebody will, you know, wrap around the wrong way, but I've taught the person before we got into anything else where they would slide out. But we just want to be extra safe and careful because, you know, I created this practice with great enthusiasm and excitement to share something that was so powerfully healing for the body, and most of the time I'm met with tremendous fear, which is just so fascinating to me. Like, oh my God, are you going to fall from the ceiling? The weight, the building can't hold the weight. Like, what if somebody falls? Like, I mean, you run through whatever fear-based mechanism that they have running, and I'm going to be met with it, which is so fascinating because it's just like, what? You know, and they're all very exaggerated versions of reality, and I've had zero problems. And so I even made this swing, you know, to make sure. Like, I personally go through, hung every swing, tested every swing, made sure everything was perfect. And so I think when we create a practice, and if you're familiar with the circus arts, you know, the first thing that we make sure is rigging, right? Everything is super safe, super reliable, just like rock climbing. But then we want to make sure we use the equipment properly. So I think it's really important when we move into this desire to teach something new that we're willing to address people's concerns with grace and ease as well. At first it was really frustrating for me. I'm just like rolling my eyes like, are you kidding me? But like these are real concerns for people's liability. And I do conferences, I do festivals, I do events, I go into studios, you work at the studios. So there's a lot of environments and a lot of different personalities that I'm navigating to make them feel really comfortable. Like not just like, okay, we'll let you get rid of, you know, we'll let you get over on us this time, you know, but next time it's just like, oh, come on. But then they experience it and they're okay. You know, it's like, oh, okay, I see. Because the swings are 3 feet from the ground and we're using them in a way that is supportive to the body. We do have some acrobatics and flips and stuff that we'll do, and you know, we make sure everything is like a-okay before we get to that level, and have the most fun possible, but always playing safe is the #1 priority when we're going through these postures. So those questions are pretty common questions. If we use the swing in the way that I'm showing you guys, you'll have zero problems, really. You know, if anything, people tell me that they're less prone to injure themselves using the swing than they would be in a normal class. Yeah. Where they could actually overextend their back or twist their knee or, you know, something like that. And when I tell people that, like, actually, this practice makes your yoga even safer. At first, they're like, you know, and then they're like, oh my God, you're right. My body feels so good. So expanded. So that's what we want to do. And especially when we're doing restorative, because if we're starting out with restorative, most likely, this is a new person. This is a person that needs some tiptoeing, you know, some hand holding. Okay, so fold the leaf into supported headstand. There's a whole sequence that we can do there. That feels really good. It's our, like, really, it's the only inversion. The supported back bend would be in the chillaxin, but our only inversion is going to be folded leaf there. Okay? And so lunges, we're going to do with the swing behind our back. I call it the upright position, as opposed to being inverted. So the upright position is always with the swing underneath our arms. So we keep the swing low enough that it's right along the bra strap, right behind the heart. And then in this position, we're going to work on our warrior poses, or our side lunges, getting into some supported twists, and then of course back bends and squats. Okay?
Is this your dancing sheet thing?
No, in the lunges it would be number 1.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for cueing me for that. So,
Just want to get it in my...
So
Okay.
upright positions, squats, lunges, and back bends. So you do the circles, the side to side, and the twist. So that's page 6. So again, it's taking the yoga translations 1 through 4, and then just breaking them up into some restorative sequences that you can use those poses. Lunges and twists would be great for bringing out the spine. So when somebody comes to me with a spinal injury, especially lower back, I'm going to stay in number 1 for a while, until they get advanced enough where I can get them into an inversion, where I'm really tractioning the spine out of the pelvis by hanging by the hips, which would be the best position, but most people aren't ready to just pop into the inversion. I'm going to get them ready with the lunges. Okay.
So isn't that like a restorative pose too, the inversion of that?
It is. Again, because I'm dealing with a lot of people that are afraid to be upside down.
Right.
And they have to learn how to wrap outside in before I'm going to get them to kick their legs up. What happens, and we will do it today, but what happens when I do the inversions is I have the swing at the waist, and then I got the legs around. Now what we can do is have the swing underneath, like we're getting into our cocoon. Right? So we can have the swing here
They feel safe.
and wrap the legs around. I personally don't like it. The other versions of the swing teach with it expanded. I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the constriction in my legs. And it's not bunching here, so I don't have the big squeeze on the quadratus. So I personally like it when it's fully around the hips. Mm-hmm.
You're right in it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You're making mistakes.
Yes. So most people, I'm going to come up. Excuse me. Most people will have the swing too high.
Yeah.
So if the swing is below the ribs, but not on the actual hips, when they come upside down, they get the love handles, and it squeezes here. So watch out for the video that you're seeing. Just come this way. So this doesn't feel that great for long term. So when I'm here with someone, and we'll get into it today and tomorrow. So when I'm here and they go upside down, so they'll just lean back, and then they have trouble kicking their legs up. They flail a little bit.
Right.
So I try not to go from this position to an inversion unless I'm using the leg loops. So we've been preparing for the inversion with 1 through 4. So I use my forearms to get the swing nice and low, and then I'm able to lean back and kick wide, and then it's right on top of the iliac crest. Makes a huge difference. So most people who come to me as beginners are not ready for that yet. But the way that we've been learning how to do chilaxin, and this is what we've been working up to, so they got into a supported back bend. That's why I say get the swing nice and low, and then with the support of the leg loops, they can wrap around, and voila. And then when they come out, they wind up back in chilaxin, and then they can acclimate in this position. So that's what we learn tomorrow, is how to get into. So first day, or first 2 days, are upright positions. And then in the intermediate training is when we start doing the inversions. Almost the entire sequencing 5-3 is inverted. So day 2, or day 3 for us, is really great because people are like, oh yeah, I can do this. This is easy. I got this. And then we get into the intermediate training. They're like, oh my God, we're like upside down for like 4 hours. And getting used to, but then they love it. And we have lots of variations, but almost all of 5 through 8 are in versions, which is really fun. So we'll have a gigantic chunk of it for tomorrow. So then we want to get into number 5, which is the grounding poses. So this is how can we incorporate not the swing, but just the handholds by themselves into a practice that allows people to get comfortable with being on the ground, to take a break. Plus, it's not just regrounding, it feels amazing on the arms and shoulders and back. And these are like the low flyers. We have some high flyers, and these are the low flyers. And the low flyers is getting comfortable coming into a pike position. So we're not using acrobatic language yet. We do that in the advance. But when we get our feet up over our head, it's called a pike. Now, I want to teach you how to do a pike before you're fully suspended in the air. So that's how I teach people how to get into a pike position while they're low flying, which means they're this far off the ground. But even then, they're like, no, and they're like afraid and don't want to bring the legs up overhead. So I want to teach how to change planes of existence, or do like a full flip while on the ground before we get up and do it in the air. Yeah. So that's our practice.
We did it in the air last night.
No,
not
really.
like
Almost. Well, the thing is both you and Adrian don't do acrobatics normally, so your body didn't naturally go into a pike, but just to show you.
I didn't do it right.
And that's okay. I mean, it's why the feet came down really quickly. So I'll just show you. So pike is when both legs come up over you like this, right? So it's the same position as on the ground, but if you don't do that, then you fall over. Remember when you fell over?
Which is what I did.
Yeah, the first time. But most of the time, when you learn acrobatics, you go from here into a pike, and then you change the feet. But I wasn't going to get into that. We'll get into it when we start doing some of the acrobatic moves. Back over. But what I'm talking about, just to give you guys a little teaser, is when we get into last day, day 6. We're going to come up to our high flyers, which is wrapping our legs around and coming all the way up here. So from here we pike. So I'm fully suspended in the swing. Bring my legs up overhead. That's a pike. But obviously, I know, obviously, if you can't do it on the ground, you're going to have a harder time doing it in the air. But it's the same move, right? Mm-hmm. So if my legs aren't wrapped around, I'm on the ground. I kick my legs up overhead. Pike. So it's also called clearance.
Cool.
From on the ground, because you clear.
Right.
So yeah, so if you looked above restorative, you'll see it says clearance, number 6. That's when we learn how to do pikes. And we do it on the ground first, and then we do it in the air. So yeah, super fun. So the grounding poses help us get into Supta Virasana. Supta Virasana is when we're sitting on our shins, and then we lean back for those Stroke yoga. Extremely difficult pose to do on the ground. I don't know how many of you guys practice yoga, but I've had knee surgeries, and like I said, I just don't do it anymore. This allows me to get into a camel and go back and practice doing some pull-ups and that kind of thing in a position that feels safe, and then relax into child. So I highly recommend getting into some of the grounded sequencing, and then just play with it too. Yesterday.
One question.
Yes.
Ground, I get what you mean by grounding, but where is that on your?
So we're in restorative,
Yep.
the last page,
Gotcha.
and it's number 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're only doing restorative today, so that last page, and we're almost finished. We're going to get into cocoon and the leg stretches. No problem. And so this is not part of the 1 through 4 sequencing. Yeah, it's its own special thing. Okay, what we did yesterday in class is from our hand positions. We got kind of playful with it, which, you know, you can kind of shift from side to side, do some spins and twists, get into some breakdancing moves, and just kind of play with it. So that's why, again, I call it aerial yoga play. So, you know, you can do the leg